Row for Show Productions presents Humble Beginnings, the Undrafted Podcast. Welcome to Humble Beginnings, the Undrafted Podcast. I'm your host, Rochelle Hamilton Jr., and today this is episode 44 of the Undrafted Podcast. Man, it's been about a year since I started this podcast, man, and I am so thankful to be on this platform. I got to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for blessing me with this platform. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to tune in. We got a good show for you today. We're going to talk about the NFL, the free agency, how can I put it? The crazy NFL free agency period officially started over this past week, and man, there were some pretty big transactions that happened across the NFL. I'll talk about a few of those, especially the trade between the Giants where they traded Odell Beckham Jr. to the Browns. Man, I love what the Cleveland Browns are doing. I loved what they did last offseason. I love what they did during the season, and I love what they're doing this offseason. The Cleveland Browns ain't no joke. LeBron James, he passed up Michael Jordan for fourth on the NBA's all-time scoring list. I'll talk a little bit about that. Man, the Lakers and LeBron James, man, they have had a rough season. And I might sound a little nasally, man. I fell asleep with my fan on last week, and I've been fighting the cold ever since. So if I sound a little nasally, please forgive me. But LeBron James, man, LeBron and the Lakers, for all the accolades that LeBron has accumulated over his career, man, this year has probably got to be the toughest year of his career. And I'll talk a little bit about that. In What's the Way with Chef Rodaddy, I talk about all the time, we talk about taking care of yourself physically, the things that you put inside your body. We talk about being mentally tough. But one thing we don't talk about near enough on this show is being spiritually tough. So I'll touch a little bit about that in What's the Way with Chef Rodaddy. Without further ado, man, let's just get into it. Let's get started with The Low with Ro. Free agency kicked off in the NFL this week, and there was a bunch of high-profile swaps and signings that happened across the league. Le'Veon Bell, he finally got a new team in the Jets. Antonio Brown, he got business booming over in Oakland. Odell Beckham Jr. was traded to the Browns. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. The Broncos, they got some much-needed offensive line help and some other big signings across the league. Case Keenum. Now, with the Broncos, Case Keenum was traded to the Redskins officially on Wednesday the 13th in the latest episode of the sports drama as the Broncos quarterback carousel turns. Now, this move comes as no surprise after Denver traded for Joe Flacco a few weeks back. Now, as far as this whole deal with Case Keenum, the Broncos, they received a 6th-round pick from the Redskins in this deal. Now, for Washington, this move makes sense because there's still uncertainty with Alex Smith as he recovers from that bad leg injury from last season. Now, the thing that gets me with this signing, though, one, I hate it for Case Keenum because he really didn't get a fair shot over in Denver. And two, here we are in yet another offseason, and the Denver Broncos still haven't gotten their quarterback woes figured out. Now, Case Keenum, the reason why I say Case Keenum didn't get a fair shot from the Broncos last year, because they consistently put him in formations and a system that did not play to his strengths. Now, I'm not sitting here saying, Case Keenum is Peyton Manning or a world beater or anything like that, but Case Keenum is a play-action type of quarterback. He's better on the move. He's better at rolling out of the pocket, making things happen with his feet. And Denver consistently tried to make him a pocket passer, essentially. And, we have Vance Joseph and Bill Musgrave to thank for that. Now, this is one aspect that I don't understand with a lot of NFL teams. They'll spend all this time scouting guys, looking at film, taking all these notes, and then at the end paying dudes all this money on these contracts to get them to come, play for their team and offer their services for this deal, only to try to force a guy into an offense that doesn't fit his skill set, and then everybody acts surprised when the dude struggles. That's one thing I haven't figured out with a lot of NFL teams. And I'm not saying that the Broncos, do this consistently, but that seems to be what happened with this Case Keenum situation. Like, you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and it just doesn't work. Oil and water don't mix. Then they didn't really help him any by running the ball as infrequently as they did, which is unfortunate because when Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman, when they were allowed to get consistent touches in the game, the Broncos were at the top of the league in rushing, and they often won those games. I still remember some games last year where Denver, they're running the ball down the defense's throat in the first half, And here comes the second half after halftime, and for whatever reason, the Broncos just abandoned the run with no rhyme or reason, and then boom, all of a sudden, the opposing team, they're climbing back into the game, they're starting to get more momentum on their side, and before you know it, the Broncos fall behind, and then the Broncos ultimately take the L. That happened more times than what it should have last season. A quarterback's best friend is the running game. Case Keenum had a best friend last year in Philip Lindsay and Royce Freeman, but unfortunately, they were not allowed to kick it very much. And this is not to absolve Case Keenum from criticism at all, because some of the throws and some of the decisions that he made last year, they were terrible. I mean, that's just, to be straight up honest with you, some of the decisions and some of the plays that Case Keenum made were straight up terrible. And it's like, bruh, what in the world are you doing? So even though I'm not saying it's all Case Keenum's fault, some of it is Case Keenum's fault. But what I am saying is that if the Broncos have not fixed the two biggest problems at the quarterback spot, they don't stand a chance to really do much better in 2019, because the actual quarterback really hasn't been the biggest problem in Denver, as big of a problem as it is. Because, yes, Brock Osweiler and Paxton Lynch, yes, they were terrible. But somebody had to scout these dudes. Somebody had to break down film on these guys. Somebody had to draft them. Somebody had to coach them. And in sports, no matter what sport you're talking about, football, baseball, basketball, track, whatever, coaching is everything, because coaching can literally make or break a team. Case in point, Gary Kubiak, he went 9-7 in 2016 after the Broncos won the Super Bowl that previous year. They just missed the playoffs that year by one game. So Gary Kubiak, he goes and he retires as head coach, and the Broncos, they hire Vance Joseph, and Vance Joseph looked like a deer in headlights. He was a first-time head coach, and Vance Joseph, he looked like a deer in headlights on his way to a 5-11 record in 2017 with roughly the same roster, talent-wise. Now, until Denver fixes its scouting and coaching issues at the quarterback spot and other spots on the roster, it's really not going to matter who's at quarterback. And the thing about it is, now this new coaching staff that Denver has, I like the philosophy. I like the things that these guys are doing. Some of the free agent signings that they've brought in. Tells me that this new coaching staff, it's a lot more, how can I say it? The foundation of it is better. It seems like the philosophy is better. Vic Fangio, he came in talking about not beating ourselves by, death by inches, and not letting the little stuff slide, because little things turn into big things. And it's just, stuff like that lets you know that this coaching staff is a lot more stable. And, in so many words, they know what they're doing. Now, the thing that gives me hope, because, we talk about the quarterback, but one thing that a quarterback needs is a good offensive line. Well, the Broncos, they got Mike Munchak to come in and coach the line, and he's possibly the best offensive line coach in the league. Rich Scangarello, he comes in, he should help immediately in coaching Joe Flacco, which that's another discussion for another time. He should be able to come in and help immensely with Joe Flacco at the quarterback spot, but I'm not really going to get my hopes up yet. And the reason why I'm not going to get my hopes up yet, because I don't know which version of Joe Flacco the Broncos are getting. Are we going to get the postseason 2012 Joe Flacco, where he led them, he went on that hot streak and led Baltimore to a Super Bowl? Or are we going to get the Joe Flacco over the last few years? Because the thing that gives me pause with Joe Flacco is the fact that, especially in today's NFL teams do not give up on quarterbacks. Once they find out, or at least think that they have something in this quarterback, they will move heaven and earth, the sun and the moon, to get this guy and to keep him. And the fact that Baltimore gave up on Joe Flacco, essentially, that gives me pause. And then on top of that, after the last few years that Joe Flacco's had in Baltimore, it really kind of gives me pause. So I was like, so when I saw this happen, that's why, when the trade happened on paper, at least a few weeks ago, that's why I was like, dude, I don't know which way to look on this, because part of me is optimistic and saying, okay, well, maybe he just needs a change in scenery, and maybe that will, sometimes a change of scenery really helps the guy. It rejuvenates him, gets him to refocus and recalibrate, and maybe that'll work out in the Broncos' favor. Then there's another part of me that really just wants to tell Denver to send this dude back to Baltimore. So I don't really know which way I'm going on that, so only time will tell, but I'm hoping and praying to football God that Joe Flacco works out. And another reason why I really don't want to get my hopes up too high is because every year around this time, every team is optimistic. Every team is confident. A lot of draft reports say John Elway, he's head over heels for Drew Lock, and that alone scares me as well, but only because of John Elway's track record with drafting quarterbacks. But that's another discussion for another day. I've talked about that in the past as well. But, like I said earlier, this new coaching staff, it does give me a little bit of hope because Denver needs a big turnaround in 2019. We need offensive line help. We need some linebackers. We need a few pass rushers. We need a tight end or two. And this is the thing with the tight ends. Can we please grab a healthy tight end? If we're going to draft one, can we please get a healthy tight end for once? I get it. They draft these guys on hope. They can draft them, sit them, and put them on IR and let them get healthy and things like that. And, the tight ends that Denver has, they got a lot of they do have a lot of potential. Troy Fumagalli, Jake Butt, and then there's another one in there. I can't remember his name right now. And then, of course, they just re-signed Jeff Hireman to a contract deal on yesterday. So, as far as the tight end spot, there's potential there. But, if we're going to grab a tight end, can we at least get one that can come in and immediately help? And we also need a corner and a safety or two. Now, they just drafted. Now, they just signed Kareem Jackson. Well, the Broncos really don't need corner help. They might bring in another guy or two. But, man, they just signed Kareem Jackson from the Texans, and they signed Bryce Callahan from the Bears. So the Broncos secondary is going to be sick coming into 2019. Now, like I said, as far as Kareem Jackson goes, I'm excited about this signing because, he comes over from the Texans. The only drawback I really see with this signing, he's been in the league 10 years, so he's got some age on him, but, he signed a 3-year deal, which is worth $23 million in guarantees. Now, this was a great signing for Denver because this dude flies around and he plays hard. This brother can flat out fly, and he's physical, man. I mean, the dude, when he meets the ball carrier is going to feel it. And, because the reason why I say that, when the Texans played Denver in Denver last season, he was all around the ball. He was flying around. I mean, he flashed up on your screen. There was one play in particular where Phillip Lindsay spread out wide, and Case threw Phillip the ball. Phillip Lindsay catches the ball. I mean, as soon as the ball hits Phillip Lindsay's hand, Kareem Jackson is there to meet him with the force of God. I mean, he laid a hit. He laid the wood on Phillip Lindsay, man. Y'all know how much I love Phillip Lindsay. So that right there, that alone, like when I saw that game and I heard Kareem Jackson, I'm like, okay, that brother can fly around. So I really like that signing. And speaking of the Texans, the Broncos and the Texans play each other this year in Houston. So I might have to actually try to make my way down to that game because, man, I got to see my boys. So in addition to Kareem Jackson, the Broncos got major offensive line help with the signing of right tackle Juwan James to a 4-year deal worth $32 million in guarantees. Now, this makes Juwan James the highest paid right tackle in the league right now. Now, the Broncos, they've wanted this dude for a few years. They came close to grabbing him the last few years, and they finally got him. And this is the thing, man. The Broncos have had offensive line issues for years, so he's going to be a big part in helping to finally solve this issue. We'll see what happens with the Denver Broncos, man, but one thing is for sure. Man, I love the Denver Broncos. Let's move on to I'm in and I'm out. Keeping with the theme that is the crazy NFL free agency period, the Cleveland Browns, they made possibly the biggest transaction of all NFL offseason on Tuesday night when they acquired Odell Beckham Jr. from the Giants. The Giants, they traded OBJ for Cleveland's first-round pick and one of their second-round picks in this year's draft, and safety Jabril Peppers. Now, with this move, the Cleveland Browns immediately become the best team in the AFC North. And I am 100% in on that take, and I'm 100% in on this move because I've loved what Cleveland has been doing since last offseason. Last offseason, they drafted Jarvis Landry, Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, and then they put together a pretty nice defense, too. Now, that defense is probably going to take a step back because they got rid of Greg Williams as the defensive coordinator, but then, they did all that last offseason. They had a pretty decent season, and then they go to add to everything that they did last offseason. Then they go and they grab this brother. Now, this is what OBJ is bringing to this squad. Since Odell Beckham Jr. came into the league in 2014, he's third in targets per game, he's fourth in receptions per game, he's third in receiving yards per game, and he's third in receiving touchdowns. Now, you put that production with his college teammate Jarvis Landry, and you have a wide receiver tandem that is going to give opposing defenses some major headaches. And Baker Mayfield, he's the man behind center, and he just happened to set an NFL record last year for touchdown passes for a rookie. Now, Odell Beckham Jr., he's a speed machine, and that dude has a catch radius that is insane. Now, this brother makes catches that really shouldn't be catches, because if you watch him before the game, if you watch him in warm-ups and things like that, and watch some of his practices, he practices circus catches specifically for in-game situations. Now, of course, he gets all the flash and the flair and the autographs and things like that. Of course, that comes along with it. But don't think this dude isn't, training and preparing his body for in-game situations, because, with all the antics and everything else that Odell Beckham Jr. brings with him, he's still one of the hardest working people in the National Football League. Now, as far as Odell Beckham Jr. goes, sure, there's going to be people that bring up his off-the-field antics and some of his on-the-field stuff. He had the incident where he had the incidents with the kicking net and all of that. Then he had the time where they went out on that boat a few years back before the playoff game against Green Bay. He's had where he's throwing things on the sideline, the water coolers, and throwing temper tantrums and things like that. Then he had the off the field stuff with the Instagram model in the hotel room, and with the pizza on the bed, and some white powdery substance, which people speculated as to what that was. But he's had all these incidents, and now some of that is as far as the on field stuff, a lot of that is frustration, because let's be honest. Look at who his quarterback is in New York. Eli Manning, and I like Eli Manning, but let's just be honest. Eli Manning, he's washed. And I'm not saying that Odell Beckham Jr. is right in acting out the way he did. All I'm saying is on the field stuff, I can understand why he did it. Now, some of that is frustration. Some of that's immaturity. Now, the off the field stuff, there's no excuse for that. That's immaturity, and that's just dumb decisions. But I really think that, he can grow out of it, because guys can and they do grow up. And then you put him in a situation where, him and Juice Landry, they're best friends. He's in this situation now. Life in Cleveland is not near as fast as life in New York, so that may help him as well. Things may slow down for him. He's not in the media spotlight like he was in New York. He won't be like that in Cleveland. So that may help out. So I really think this situation can really work out for him in Cleveland. Like I said, man, I love this move for the Browns. The Browns, with the moves that they've made over the last few years, they are the team to beat in the AFC North, and they will be for the foreseeable future. Because, and here's the reason why I say that, Pittsburgh's going to take some steps back. You got rid of the franchise running back in Le'Veon Bell. They got rid of their franchise wide receiver in Antonio Brown. And as far as the Steelers go, man, if I'm a Steelers fan, I would be hot as fish grease right now seeing what the Giants got in return for Odell Beckham Jr. Now, the Steelers, they basically gave Antonio Brown away for a third-round pick and a fifth-round pick when they could have gotten at least a second-rounder. So if I'm a Steelers fan, I'm hot. Pittsburgh, they really kind of called themselves trying to send a message to the players, and they really played themselves. Like, that to me, the whole deal with the whole situation with L. Bell and Antonio Brown, for how they executed them, that was a dumb move. Now, Antonio Brown, the Steelers, they really didn't have a choice but to move him, but they could have got back more than what they got for Antonio Brown. I'm sorry. I don't understand what Pittsburgh's management is doing. The Baltimore Ravens, they're probably going to struggle. Now, last year they had a top-notch defense, but they've let some of that talent go. Lamar Jackson, he's good. I like Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson is going to be a really good quarterback. It's just that with Lamar Jackson for the foreseeable future, I personally think he's going to have a little bit bigger of a learning curve than Baker Mayfield, only because their styles of play is totally different. That's the only reason why I see it taking Lamar Jackson a little more time to catch on than Baker Mayfield. And as far as Cincinnati is Cincinnati. Ain't nobody worried about the Bengals. The Cleveland Browns, they will be the AFC North champs in 2019, and they might even make the playoffs. The Cleveland Browns are for real. Moving right along, and I'm in and I'm out. LeBron James, he passed Michael Jordan for fourth place on the NBA's career scoring list last Wednesday night. He scored his 32,293rd point on a layup in the second quarter against the Nuggets. LeBron James belongs on the Mount Rushmore of the NBA. Period. I'm 100% in on that take. This achievement by LeBron has only added more fuel to the LeBron versus Michael Jordan for the GOAT title fire. Now, I don't do GOAT arguments for the simple fact that no matter what sport you're talking about, doesn't matter what sport you're talking about, there's simply too many variables to say with absolute certainty who's the GOAT. Because, and for instance, you have to think about certain situations like this. Michael Jordan, he never faced a team like Golden State, the same way LeBron isn't playing in an NBA with the same rules as Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, he had Hall of Fame talent around him consistently, and he had Phil Jackson as his coach for a large part of his career. LeBron James has had Eric Spoelstra and Ty Lue as his coaches when he won his chips. Now, he had Dwayne Wade, Ray Allen, Chris Bosh, and Kyrie Irving along for those as well. But for a large part of LeBron's career, he hadn't played with a lot of Hall of Fame guys. I mean, look at the Cavaliers from last year. I mean, he took the Cavaliers last year to the finals in the East, and look at the Cavs this year. And, you know, we ain't even going to talk about what's going on with the Lakers because everybody kind of knew he was going to struggle with the Lakers just with the way the Lakers are constructed. But, yeah, I really didn't see the Lakers not making the playoffs this year. But as far as this GOAT argument, there's so many variables to it that it's really impossible to say who it is in concrete. It truly, to me, it truly boils down to who you think or feel it is based on your opinion. Now, the bad thing for LeBron is he achieved this milestone in the midst of a turbulent season. Because like I said, this season has been it's been a bad season for LeBron and the Lakers. I mean, he's received a ton of criticism this season. Now, some of it's warranted because, you know, here, especially here lately, LeBron has looked like he's been checked out at times. You know, he's not really even playing defense, which you can get into that situation. I mean, I can kind of understand why he's not. I mean, especially at this late in his career. You know, he's called out his teammates in the media, and I love LeBron, but, you know, some of the ways that he's conducted himself, you know, lately, you know, he deserves to be criticized for it. You know, he hasn't done everything the right way this season. Now, as far as the Lakers, I did not see them missing the playoffs altogether, and, you know, that hasn't helped the criticism that's being piled onto LeBron. I think most people saw the Lakers at least get into the playoffs and at least get into the second round, unless they met Golden State, in the first round, and of course they would have got swept at that point. Now Luke Walton's he's got a lot of flack for his substitutions and in the way he's playing guys, but you know the way the Lakers roster is set up, it wasn't going to mix anyway because they don't have a lot of shooters, and that's something that LeBron has always had around him for the most part in his career. Their defense has been bad since LeBron came back from injury. Lonzo Ball, he's been out for a few weeks now. That's hurt them defensively pretty bad as well. That's another thing that wiped the Lakers out this season. The injury bug. The injury bug bit the Lakers hard. LeBron, he missed 18 games. Rajon Rondo, he missed a lot of games. Lonzo Ball, he's missed a lot of games. Brandon Ingram, he's missed games. So some of the criticism that LeBron and the Lakers have gotten this season is warranted and it's completely fair, and some of it's not because nobody asked for injuries. But, you know, among all the criticism and all the accolades that LeBron has gotten this year, you know, one aspect of LeBron is missing in this whole argument. LeBron was hyped all the way up coming out of high school. You know, he was called the chosen one coming out of high school. Now, he's lived up to this hype. He's exceeded this hype. He's exceeded the hype, pressure, and attention that was placed on him in high school at such a young age. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he was hyped as this great prodigy as well, just like LeBron at an early age. Kobe Bryant wasn't hyped like that. Michael Jordan, he wasn't hyped like that either at that young of an age. So the fact that LeBron has been able to live up to the hype as consistently as he has, to me, is remarkable. Now, a lot of people because here's the thing. A lot of people get to the Sports Illustrated cover and they're called the next big thing or the next Michael Jordan, and they turn out to be a bust. You know, with a lot of accolades comes a lot of criticism. With a lot of hype comes a lot of pressure. And LeBron, he's lived up to it in every sense of the word. Now, like I say, this year has been a terrible year for him, but even with everything that he's done, he's still averaging 27, 8, and 8. And for LeBron to still live up to this hype, this pressure, this attention, it takes a mentally tough person. It takes a special person to handle this kind of pressure, to live up to it, and consistently deliver on it over an extended period of time. And LeBron James has done exactly that. Now, LeBron and the Lakers, they're down right now. They're down right now, but trust me, these boys are coming back next year. The Lakers not going to take all this sitting down. So, you know, everybody's piling on LeBron. Everybody's piling on the Lakers. They will be back. And no. I am not a Lakers fan. I am not a Lakers fan at all. I'm just a LeBron James fan. So I follow the Lakers. I'm still not a Lakers fan. I just want to see LeBron do well. That's really about it. I really don't have a team when it comes to the NBA. I just enjoy the sport. But when it comes to LeBron, LeBron is my dog. And I want to see LeBron do well. My guy is going to be back next season. You can trust that. What's the wave with Chef Rodaddy? Now, I talk so much on this podcast about sports and athletes and all that, and that's cool. Like I said before, part of being an athlete or part of playing sports is taking care of your body and taking care of your mind, which means, watching what you eat, working out and things like that. Working out to stay in top physical shape for peak performance and being mentally tough. The same goes for us in our daily lives. It's just a different form of execution. To be the best that you can be, it takes discipline, taking care of your body and taking care of your mind. Now, we talk about being physically tough, we talk about being physically fit, we talk about being mentally tough. But one thing we don't talk about nearly enough, and is the most important part of our lives, is being spiritually tough and spiritually fit. Now, for me, God is the center of my life, and I am not ashamed to say that at all. There's a few of my friends who don't believe in God, and you know what? I respect that. Now, I don't agree with it, but I do respect their beliefs, because we all have the right to believe in what we feel to be true or not be true. And when you choose to live for God, you are choosing a hard walk of life. Now, sometimes, and here's the reason why I say that, because sometimes, and I've been guilty of this as well, sometimes we as believers, we tend to think that just because we give our lives and we give our hearts to God, we tend to trick ourselves into thinking that things should be easier. When in fact, things will get harder before they get easier. Because here's the thing, living for God is hard. It is. Living for God is hard. Trusting in God is hard. Waiting on God is hard. Obeying God's word is hard. Even believing in God can be hard. For the simple fact that we cannot physically see God. We can't physically feel him. We can't even physically smell him. He tells us in his word that it is impossible to please him without faith. It takes a great amount of faith to believe in something that you cannot see, because God is the spirit, so you can't see him. But, God is a lot like air. You can't see him, but you know he's there. You see his works when you open your eyes every morning. You feel his works when you wake up in the morning and you have the use of your limbs, when you can brush your teeth, when you can take a shower, when you can cook your food, when you can put your clothes on by yourself. You smell his works by the simple fact that the senses in your nose are working, and they communicate with your brain and tells you if something smells amazing or if something smells like trash. And the thing about it, is, when you choose to live for God, there's a quote by Tony Dungy that says, when you choose to live for God, you better be ready to put up a fight. And that is so true, because the enemy will fight you whenever you choose to live for God, because, when it comes to empty souls or lost souls and things like that, Satan is not really worried about the people who are lost, the people who are deceived, the people who aren't really trying to live for God, because in his mind, he's got them. So when you choose to live for God, you're going to run into some adversity. Well, you're going to run into adversity and hard times anyway, just because that's just a part of life. And pain, adversity, disappointment, rejection, all of that is part of life. And the thing we have to remember as believers, there's not a thing that we go through down here that Jesus didn't go through when he was down here. During his time on earth, Jesus experienced everything that we've experienced down here. Jesus experienced disappointment. He experienced betrayal. He experienced rejection. He experienced temptation. He experienced pain. He experienced life. He even experienced death. So there's not a thing that we go through down here as human beings that Jesus Christ did not experience while he was here. One of the main reasons why God even sent Jesus is because he wanted to know what it was like to be human. He wanted to know what it was like to feel pain. He wanted to know what it was like to be tempted with sin. So whenever we're going through these things, we have to remember that, hey, look, God, or Jesus, however you want to put it, because Jesus is God in human form, he's already been here, so he knows what we're dealing with. Another aspect of living for God, sometimes when we're talking to God, we're going through a situation, we're going through a rough time. Sometimes those are the times, and if we're really honest with ourselves, those are the times when it's really hard to trust in God, because there are times in life where you're walking by faith and, you're doing all the right things, and and you hear all the time, hey, when a breakthrough is coming, the hard times, things will get hard before they get better. You hear all this. And it's like, things are getting harder, but you're not hearing anything. And it's like, okay, God, I keep hearing all this and I keep believing, but nothing is, nothing's turning. And I don't really hear you saying anything. And those are the times where it's hard, because, with God has no issue showing us the destination. God has no problem showing you the destination. God is really good at giving an overview. He's really good at showing you the end destination. God is not big on giving us details. God is not big on filling in the little cracks and crevices along the journey. And the main reason why is because he wants to build that faith. He wants to build your faith in him, because every level that he's going to take you to is going to require a new level of faith. And I've had to learn that lesson the hard way over some things that I've been through. And, I can remember a few years ago, I was frustrated with the job, I didn't want to work here anymore. Like I hated it and I wasn't happy. And instead of me, being still and listening to God, I'm sitting here running back and forth, between, in and out of town and, doing all these things because I call myself trying to get prepared for this job. And, I'm preparing for my next journey, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And the whole time, God is saying, Ro, you need to slow down. And I couldn't hear God telling me to slow down because I was too busy trying to make this happen on my own. I was too busy. I guess I call myself trying to do God's job for him because God was taking too long. God was not listening to me. So if God is not listening to me and God's going to take this long, well, let me go ahead and help God out and try to, make this happen on my own. And I tried to make it happen on my own. And let me tell you, it was the worst thing that could have ever happened to me. And the reason why I say it was the worst thing that ever happened to me, because, man, listen, and I'm not going to get into details. I'll go into details on a later podcast. But, I had sit up here and I had, went to Houston and everything, and I had made this move, and, I had got this job and everything. And I just thought, hey, man, you know what? I'm smart enough to figure it out. I'll figure it out as I go. And, man, let me tell you, it crashed and burned, man. But I'm so glad that it crashed and burned, because through that situation, through the 10 months that I was down there, I learned some important lessons. And, man, let me tell you, when I went down there, Houston was actually the best place for me as far as God goes, because God had me in a situation where I didn't have any family. I have a lot of friends in Houston, and I hung out with my friends in Houston. But at the end of the day, God had me in a situation where my family, I didn't have any family down there, because God knows if I would have had family down there, they would have helped me out. But God had to get me in a situation where nobody could help me but God. And he had to put me in a situation where he and only he could get me out of it. I had made this mess. I had got myself in it, but I needed his help in getting myself out of it. And, it's funny. I was doing all this, back and forth, moving all around, and I wasn't really even talking to God. I was talking to God, but it was just kind of like a routine type of deal. God, thank you for waking me up in the morning. I'd get up and I would literally say the same thing every morning. Even when I would sit at the table and call myself talking to God, it was the same thing every morning. I didn't really tune in to listen to God. I just told him what I wanted, and that was that. I basically treated God like a genie, where it's like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to talk to God, and I'm going to read this Bible, read the same scriptures that I read every morning. Then that way I can say, hey, I gave God time, and pat myself on the back. And it don't work like that. God desires a relationship with us. God desires an intimate relationship with us. And the reason why I say, and it's funny when you say intimate, man, there are times when I talk to Jesus and I talk to God, and literally God talks to me in a way that only I can understand. He sounds the way that how can I put this? He sounds basically kind of how I sound, but his wisdom and the truth behind it, how I say, and it's going to sound funny when I say it, he sounds a lot like either I sound or people that are close to me sound, like my parents or my uncles. But, man, it's crazy. Like, he may sound like them, but the wisdom and the knowledge and the truth is to infinity of what any man can comprehend. And he talks to me in a way that only I can understand. And that's the relationship that God wants with us. He wants to talk to us in a way that only we can understand. And it's amazing. Like, to hear from God, man. And I remember a situation that happened in Houston. And I won't get into the details just yet, because, I'm opening it up to y'all, but I ain't there yet to tell y'all everything. I ain't going to tell you everything, but I'll tell you a little bit. There was a situation that happened in Houston, and, man, I remember when it happened, and I was just like, dude, I don't know how in the world I'm going to get out of this, because I am stuck. I am in a pickle, as some people would say. And I remember I sat on my apartment couch, and I will never forget this. I sat on the couch. There was nobody in this apartment. This little, 700 square foot apartment in Katy, Texas. And I remember I sat there on the couch, and I'm just sitting here thinking, like, how in the world am I going to get through this? And I will never forget, I heard this voice say, "Can you hear me now?" And that's how I knew it was God, because with God, God will speak, but there was nobody else in the room. God will speak, but nobody spoke. You hear a voice, but nobody talked to you. And that's the way God likes to operate with us. God will do things that don't make sense in the natural form of things. Because most of the time when you hear somebody talk, when you hear a voice, it's somebody talking. I heard a voice, but nobody spoke. And it's just like when he spoke to Moses with the burning bush. You know, he lit this bush on fire, but the bush didn't burn. Just like with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They got tossed in the fire, and, you know, they threw the fire in them, but they didn't burn. So, you know, a lot of times when God is working something in our lives, when he's trying to do something in our lives, he will do things specifically that don't make sense to us. When he's trying to get our attention, he'll do things specifically that don't make sense to us in the natural way of things, but they make perfect sense to him because God's ways are not our ways. God's thoughts are not our thoughts. God's time is not our time. And that's the thing we have to remember when we're dealing with God. We got to, you know, I used to have that bad about trying to put God in a box, trying to put God in handcuffs. And, you know, God, you know, it's supposed to happen this way. And, you know, God, this is not happening the way I thought it was going to happen. So it's not going to happen. And the whole time he's telling me, Ro, I need you to sit down and just do what I ask you to do. I got everything else. I got this. Do you trust me or do you not? Because if you don't trust me, then it's no need of me even working on your behalf. And then those are the times when I have to remember, okay, well, you know, God, you're telling me, well, God, you're right. You know, I got to trust you. So, you know what? I'm going to get out of your way. You do your thing. Just, you know, let me know when you need me to know something. Outside of that, I'm going to go do what you told me to do over here and you handle your business because I already know God is going to handle what he said. I got to handle my business. So that's just what we have to remember when we're talking about God. I say this every time on this podcast at the end. Just do your best and let God handle the rest. No matter what you're dealing with in life, no matter what situation you're believing in God to do, no matter what situation you're dealing with, you handle what you can handle. Let God lead you. Talk to him. Follow his lead. Handle what you can handle and let God handle the rest. That's the best I can tell you. That's the best I can tell you. And when God says no on something, leave it alone. It doesn't matter if you're talking about a relationship. It doesn't matter if you're talking about a job. It doesn't matter if you're talking about a vehicle. It doesn't matter if you're talking about money. It doesn't matter. Whatever it is, when God says no, leave it alone. When God closes the door, leave it shut. When God opens the door, run through it. I mean, that's all I can tell you. And I can tell you from my personal experiences that God will never lead you wrong. So take it from me. I'm not going to get too deep. I'm not going to get too far off on this deal. I'm not going to sit here and preach to y'all and everything else, man. This was something that was really on my heart. You know, I could sit here and tell you all day about some things that God has done for me. And as this podcast continues to go down, as time goes on, I'll tell you more about instances where God has showed up and showed out in my life. But, you know, for this one today, I just really wanted to put the word out there, man, that look, anything that you're dealing with, trust God, man. Let him lead you and let him guide you. Because even when you think he's not listening, even when you think he's not communicating, he's listening to you, he's talking to you. He may just not be talking to you in the way that you think he should be talking to you. And let me tell you, man, when it's funny, you know, and the reason why I can say he's talking to you at all times, because he is. I remember when I first moved to Houston, I think I had been in Houston maybe like a month and a half. And I remember I was walking through this Walmart, man. I was walking through the Walmart out there in Katy. It's right off of I-10. I will never forget this. I was walking through Walmart. I was getting through the fruit section. I don't even remember what I was going to get in Walmart that day. So I'm walking through the fruit section. There's this lady, and I remember what I was wearing that day. I remember I was wearing some blue jean shorts with a Denver Broncos jersey on, because back then I used to wear jerseys. I remember I was wearing number 55 DJ Williams. This lady walks up to me, and she says, "Young man, I have no idea what your name is. I don't know anything about you, but it is on my heart to pray for you." And I was struggling at the time. You know, I was struggling with the whole job thing. You know, stuff was not looking right. And I remember thinking, well, man, I don't really know this lady. I'm not going to really tell her a whole lot about myself. And I remember she asked, she says, "Is there something that you're dealing with in your life right now? Is there something that you're struggling with in life right now?" And of course it was, but I wasn't going to tell her that because, I mean, I didn't know this lady from a can of paint. And this is a crazy world we live in. I mean, for all I know, she might be a federal agent. So I just tell her, I was like, well, you know, I really don't have anything that's going on, you know, anything serious right now. But I mean, you know, I'll take some prayer. You know, I'll always take prayer. And I remember this lady, she prayed with me right there in the middle of the Walmart fruit aisle. like right there by the onions and the tomatoes. Well, I guess that's the vegetable aisle. Right there by the onions and the tomatoes and the grapes and everything. Like, she literally just prayed. She asked me my name. I told her my name, and she prayed with me right there. She went to Lakewood Church. And it's crazy, man, because about 6 months later, I ended up going to Lakewood because that was about the only church that was open on a Saturday. And, man, just I tell that story. That story ties into some more of my Houston learning experience. I'll put it like that. It ties into more of that, but I'll get into that later on another episode of the podcast. But, man, I say that particular story to say that even when you're not walking in the path that God has told you to walk in and he's trying to get your attention, he will do it in the most unconventional ways. God will take whatever step he has to take to try and get your attention. And that's exactly what he did with me. I remember God speaking to me through my parents. I remember God speaking to me through my friends and telling me to wait and be patient. I remember God speaking to me through random people. And at the time, I just wasn't paying attention. So even when you're going through something and you feel like things aren't changing, you feel like God's not listening, he's listening and he's talking to you. It may just not be in a way that you feel like he should be communicating with you. Or you could be like me, where you're too busy wrapped up in your own line of thinking and the way you think things should be done and should be handled, that you're too wrapped up in your way of thinking that you can't see what he's trying to get you to see. You can't see what he's trying to get you to do. You can't hear what he's trying to get you to hear. So sometimes it's on us to just slow down, take it easy, be quiet. That's why he says in his word, peace, be still. Sometimes we just have to be still and let God talk to us. Let God lead us, because God will never fail you. Now, he said no weapon formed against you will prosper. He just said the weapon wouldn't prosper. He never said the weapon wouldn't form. He said, you would defeat. He said he would be there with you through the storm, through the rain, through the hard times. He never said the storms wouldn't form. He never said you wouldn't run into rainy times in life. He never said we wouldn't have hard times in life. He never said we wouldn't be disappointed. He never said we wouldn't be rejected. He never said we wouldn't be hurt. He just said he will be there for us through all those things. He said he will be our strength when we needed it. He would be our rock when we needed it. God will always be there for you, even in the hard times. Sometimes it's on us to just sit back, take a listen, and let him do what he does. Just keep doing what you do. And like I say on this podcast every week, do your best and let God handle the rest. He's got you. Well, that's my time for this episode of the Undrafted Podcast. I want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for blessing me with the gift, talent, and the resources to do this podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to tune in. Remember, you can catch the Undrafted Podcast on Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Play Music. And you can follow the Undrafted Podcast on Instagram at the Undrafted Podcast or on Twitter at RoForShowPro. I don't have a Bible verse for you this week, but I do want to encourage you to read 1 Samuel chapter 17, where it talks about the story of David and Goliath. Now, you can apply that story to a million different scenarios across your life, a bunch of different aspects in your everyday life. Take that and do what you do. And remember, do your best and let God handle the rest. Be blessed.